Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about something fascinating, the tools, these surprisingly simple tables that predict our future. I'm talking everything from how a company can promise you a pension for life all the way to how we track and fight global diseases.
So, let's just jump right in with a huge question, one that sounds almost impossible, right? How can a company actually promise you a pension for life? I mean, think about it. That's a promise, a guarantee of money that could last for decades. How on earth do they figure out how much that's going to cost?
Well, the biggest hurdle, of course, is just uncertainty. Life is messy, It's not a straight line. People change jobs, they might become disabled, they retire at all different ages, or they pass away. Every single one of those life events completely changes the math for a company.
So how do you bring order to all that chaos? Well, the experts who deal with this stuff, they're called actuaries, they have this incredibly clever tool. It's called a multiple decrement table. Now I know, that sounds super technical, but the idea behind it is actually really simple. It's just a way to track a big group of people over time and see why they leave the group. Let's actually build one.
Okay, so putting one of these together is super logical. It's just a few simple steps. First, you define who you're tracking and why they might leave. Then, you start with your initial group size. After that, it's just a year-by-year calculation. How many people left and what's our new total? Let's just do it. We'll walk through a quick example so you can see it in action.
All right, let's picture a pension plan. We're going to start with a big group, 100,000 employees. All of them are turning 60. And for this example, we're only going to track two reasons they might stop working. Either they pass away or they retire.
Okay, so in that first year, from age 60 to 61, we look at past data to make a prediction. Let's say we figure about 1% of the group will pass away, so that's 1,000 people. And maybe 20% will retire, another 20,000 people. You add that up and boom, 21,000 people have left the group. That leaves us with 79,000 people heading into age 61.
And then you do it all over again for age 61. It's the same process. But here's what's so cool. Even if the chances of dying or retiring go up as people get older, the actual number of people leaving is smaller. See, only about 20,000 this time. Why? Well, it's simple. Our starting pool of people is smaller now.
We run the math one more time for age 62, and look at that. In just 3 years, our original group of 100,000 people is now down to less than 40,000. We've got a super clear year-by-year roadmap of how many people we expect to still be in the plan.
Okay, great. So we've built the model, now let's use it. Let's say the pension promise is $24,000 a year for life. How do we use our table to figure out the price tag for that promise?
So here's the key thing you got to remember. Money in the future isn't worth the same as money today, right? A dollar you get in 20 years is worth less than a dollar in your pocket right now. So the real trick is to figure out a single number, one number today, that represents the value of all those possible future payments.
And actuaries have a name for this, of course. They call it the expected present value, or EPV. Basically, they take a table just like the one we made and add more columns, stuff like interest rates. They weigh the odds of someone retiring at age 60 versus 61 versus 62 and so on, and crunch it all down to one number. In this case, for a single 60-year-old, that number is about $13,000.
And this is where you see just how powerful this is. You take that one number, that 13 grand, and you multiply it by our entire group of 100,000 people. And suddenly, wow, that relatively small individual cost explodes into a massive liability of over $1.3 billion. That is the mountain of cash the company needs to have ready to make good on its promise.
And, this isn't just for some obscure corporate pension plan. This exact same logic, it's the engine running under the hood of some of the biggest financial systems we have. We're talking life insurance, employee benefits, even the huge cost projections for things like Social Security.
But what's really cool is that this idea of tracking a population over time, it's not just about money. It is absolutely vital in public health, too. So instead of a decrement table tracking exits, in health, they use something called a morbidity table. And that tracks health events, things like people getting sick, or recovering, or becoming disabled.
So the question changes. It's not how many will leave anymore. It's how many will get sick. This is the tool that epidemiologists use to get a real handle on the impact of a disease, which helps them figure out where to send resources and how to make smart policy decisions.
Let's look at an example. Here's a hypothetical table for COVID-19. As soon as you lay the data out like this, the patterns just jump right out at you.
You can see the rate of new cases, what they call the incidence rate, goes up with age. But the real story? Just look at that last column, the case fatality rate.
And when you graph it out, wow, it makes the key message impossible to miss. Yeah, the disease hits everyone, but the risk of a really severe, even fatal outcome, it just explodes for the 65 and over crowd. This is exactly the kind of data that tells officials who to vaccinate first, what to put in public health campaigns, and how to plan for hospital capacity.
And you can also use these tables to compare different groups. So in this example, we're looking at diabetes. And right away, the data shows us that men in this group seem to have a higher rate of new cases and a higher overall rate of the disease than women. Now, that's a clue. It could mean anything: biology, lifestyle, maybe even just how often they get screened, but it tells researchers where to look next.
So, at the end of the day, what did we learn? Well, the big takeaway is this. Whether you're talking about a billion-dollar pension fund or a global pandemic, the basic tool used to understand it is pretty much the same. These simple tables provide a structured way to look at a messy, uncertain future and turn it into risk that we can actually manage.
And that really makes you think, doesn't it? When you consider the price you pay for insurance, or the public health warnings you see on TV, or even how a whole country plans its budget, it makes you wonder what else in our world is being quietly guided by simple tables just like these, running the numbers behind the scenes.